The cosmic fog shifted across the vast expanse of Marathia's legendary swamplands, its poisonous tendrils swirling through the air like ghostly fingers. Lieutenant Koa stood at the edge of the black water, his human frame dwarfed by the towering Zalarian soldiers around him. Their crystalline armor reflected the dim light of Marathia's three moons, creating an eerie kaleidoscope of colors against the darkness. Scanners detect no stable pathways," announced Commander Traylock, his voice resonating from the vocal chambers of his exoskeleton. The Zalarian's four arms simultaneously operated different devices, each producing increasingly alarming readings. "The black box signal remains consistent, approximately 12 kilometers across this terrain." Koa nodded silently, studying the murky waters stretching before the Interplanetary Coalition force. As the sole human representative in this mission, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon him. The recovery of the research vessel's black box was critical. It contained data on unexplained gravitational anomalies that could revolutionize interstellar travel, potentially cutting journey times between Earth and the outer colonies by years. "The swamp appears deceptively shallow," Sari, the Altarian engineer, observed. Her silver skin shimmered as she adjusted her sensory filaments. "But my readings indicate unpredictable depth variations. Some areas drop suddenly to 20 meters or more." Gorak, a hulking Dulcan private, snorted through his respiratory vents. "Nothing our hover platforms can't handle. We're wasting time with these observations." Commander Traylock's upper eyes narrowed at the young soldier, while his lower pair continued scanning the horizon. "Procedure will be followed. Private. This planet has claimed 3 expedition teams already. We will not become the 4th. The Coalition had deployed with state-of-the-art equipment, anti-gravity platforms, molecular trackers, energy barriers, and communication arrays linked directly to the command ship in orbit. The Zalarians prided themselves on technological superiority, and this mission showcased their finest military advancements. Human technology, while impressive, was considered primitive by comparison. Koa had been included primarily as a diplomatic gesture, a token of the still fragile alliance between Earth and the more advanced civilizations. As the advanced team prepared to deploy their hover platforms across the swamp, Koa noticed something unsettling in the atmosphere. The air seemed to thicken, charged with an unnatural energy. He activated his atmospheric analyzer, but before the results could materialize, the sky erupted. A blinding flash of purple lightning tore across the dark clouds, followed by a deafening boom that seemed to shake the very planet. The magnetic storm, a phenomenon unique to Marathia, had arrived without warning, hours ahead of meteorological predictions. "Shields up!" Traylock bellowed, but his command came too late. The electromagnetic pulse hit their position with devastating force. Equipment sparked and died. The hover platforms dropped to the ground like stones. Communication devices emitted final, tortured screeches before falling silent. Even the Zalarians' exoskeletons, designed to withstand extreme conditions, flickered and partially deactivated, leaving the soldiers struggling with suddenly heavy limbs. Koa's less advanced equipment had failed completely. In the sudden silence that followed, broken only by the crackling of damaged circuits and the distant rumble of the continuing storm, he realized the gravity of their situation. The 60-member coalition force was stranded at the edge of an impassable swamp, cut off from orbital communication with no means of transportation. "Status report," Traylock demanded, his voice now unenhanced by his exoskeleton's amplifiers. The reports came in quickly, each worse than the last. The magnetic storm had fried their navigation systems, communication arrays, and propulsion units. The backup systems had been affected just as severely. Even the emergency beacons were useless in the magnetic interference that now permeated the area. "We must retreat to higher ground and await extraction," suggested Captain Vrax, Traylock's second in command. The massive Zalarian gestured toward the distant hills they had descended from hours earlier. Once the magnetic storm dissipates, the command ship will send rescue. Unacceptable, Traylock responded immediately. The storm could last days, perhaps weeks. The black box's encryption will degrade completely in less than 48 hours. Our mission parameters remain unchanged. With respect, Commander, Vrax countered, his lower arms making the subtle gesture that indicated disagreement in Zalarian culture. We cannot traverse this swamp without functioning equipment. The environmental hazards alone would decimate our forces. The argument escalated quickly, with various officers offering increasingly desperate suggestions. Some proposed salvaging parts to create rudimentary vehicles. Others suggested sending a small team to swim across. The more fatalistic among them began calculating how long their life support systems would function without power. Throughout the heated debate, Koa remained silent, observing not the arguing officers, but the swamp itself. His eyes traced the patterns of the dark water, noting the occasional bubbles that indicated gaseous emissions from the depths. He studied the massive trees growing from the swamp, their trunks partially submerged, their branches heavy with vines and moss. While the Coalition's advanced technology had been rendered useless, Koa's mind turned to something far older, knowledge passed down through countless human generations, solutions developed long before anti-gravity and force fields. He quietly detached himself from the argument and made his way to the water's edge. Kneeling down, he dipped his gloved hand into the murky liquid, testing its viscosity. It was thicker than water, almost like diluted oil, but it didn't appear immediately corrosive to his protective gear. Next, he examined the fallen trees near the shoreline. Despite their alien appearance, they shared certain properties with earth trees: fibrous structures, buoyant when dried properly. An idea began to form in Koa's mind. A solution so ancient that the technologically advanced Coalition would never have considered it. He smiled slightly as he rose to his feet, already calculating measurements and materials in his head. "Lieutenant Koa!" Traylock's sharp voice cut through his thoughts. "Your input would be valuable, assuming humans have encountered similar situations." All eyes turned to the human, the smallest and seemingly least significant member of the Coalition force. Koa straightened his shoulders, meeting the Zalarian commander's four eyes directly. "We can cross the swamp, Commander," he stated simply, "but not with technology." Traylock's upper eyes blinked in surprise, while his lower pair narrowed skeptically. "Explain." "We build a bridge," Koa said. "A floating bridge using the resources available to us: fallen logs, vines, the natural buoyancy of dried wood." The silence that followed was profound, broken only when Captain Vrax let out a sound that approximated laughter. "A primitive solution from a primitive species. How unsurprising." Commander Traylock silenced his subordinate with a gesture. "Continue, Lieutenant. How would this floating bridge support the weight of our force? The smallest of our soldiers weighs 3 times more than you." Koa pointed toward the massive fallen trees. "Those trunks are dense enough to support significant weight. By lashing multiple logs together in a cross pattern, we create a platform with distributed weight capacity. The design dates back thousands of years on Earth, used by ancient civilizations to cross rivers and marshes." "And how long would constructing such a bridge take?" Traylock asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "With the entire force working together, we could reach the black box's location within the mission timeframe," Koa replied confidently. "But we need to begin immediately." The Zalarian officers exchanged glances, their body language clearly communicating doubt. Advanced species across the galaxy had long viewed humans as resourceful, but primitive, relying on mechanical solutions where others had developed molecular manipulation and energy control. This proposal seemed to confirm those prejudices. "Commander," Vrax interjected, "surely we cannot stake the success of this mission on such a rustic approach. We should focus on repairing our equipment." Traylock remained silent, his four eyes studying Koa intently. Finally, he spoke. The engineering team reports that repairs will take a minimum of 72 hours, assuming the magnetic interference dissipates. The black box will be compromised by then. He paused, mandibles clicking softly in what Koa had learned was a sign of deep contemplation. Lieutenant Koa, you have my authorization to begin your bridge construction. Take 5 personnel of your choosing. The rest will continue repair efforts. It wasn't full support, but it was enough. Koa nodded respectfully. Thank you, Commander. Within minutes, Koa had assembled his small team. Sari, the Altarian engineer, whose flexible limbs would be perfect for lashing materials together. Gorak, the Dulcan private whose strength would be invaluable for moving heavy logs. And 3 junior Zalarian soldiers who had been assigned as a gesture of cooperation rather than genuine support. As Koa led his team toward the fallen trees, he heard Vrax mutter to another officer, "Let the human play with sticks and stones. When he fails, perhaps he'll appreciate our technology more deeply." Koa ignored the comment, focusing instead on the task ahead. He quickly organized his team into specific roles. The Dulcan would fell and transport the massive logs. The Altarian would harvest vines and create binding materials. The Zalarians would prepare the shoreline and test the water depth at regular intervals. "We'll create sections of the bridge on shore," Koa explained, sketching a simple diagram in the soft soil. Each section will consist of 3 logs bound together in a triangular pattern for stability. We'll connect multiple sections with flexible joints to allow the bridge to adapt to the swamp's contours. Sari studied the diagram with interest. This design accounts for uneven weight distribution. Impressive for such a simple concept. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective, Koa replied. Technology can fail, but physics remains constant. As they worked, Koa noticed the skeptical glances from the Zalarians. They followed his instructions precisely, but without enthusiasm, clearly believing the effort to be futile. Only Sari seemed genuinely intrigued by the process, asking questions about similar structures on Earth and offering suggestions based on her engineering expertise. The first hours were difficult. The alien trees, while similar to Earth's in some respects, had unique properties that required adjustments to Koa's original plan. Their outer bark contained a resinous substance that made binding difficult, and their core was surprisingly brittle. Through trial and error, Koa discovered that by stripping the bark and using the middle layers of the wood, they could create sufficiently strong components. By nightfall, they had completed 3 bridge sections, each approximately 2 meters long. It was progress, but far from sufficient. The black box's signal originated from approximately 12 kilometers across the swamp. At their current pace, they would need weeks to reach it. As darkness settled over the swamp, Commander Traylock approached their worksite. He examined the completed sections with all 4 eyes, his expression unreadable. "Your progress is inadequate," he stated bluntly. "At this rate, the mission will fail." Koa straightened from where he had been securing a binding knot. "Commander, we're still learning the properties of the local materials. With more personnel, we could—" "You will have more personnel," Traylock interrupted. "The repair efforts have yielded minimal results. The magnetic interference continues to increase rather than dissipate." He paused, mandibles clicking in apparent frustration. "I am reassigning 30 soldiers to your bridge construction. They will report at first light." Koa tried to hide his surprise. "Thank you, Commander. With additional help, we can establish an efficient production system." Traylock's upper eyes narrowed. "This is not a vote of confidence, Lieutenant. It is a strategic allocation of resources when alternatives have been exhausted. Do not mistake necessity for approval." "Understood, sir." As Traylock departed, Sari approached Koa. "You've impressed him," she said quietly. "Zalarians rarely adapt their strategies once established." "He's a good commander," Koa replied. "Good commanders prioritize mission success over ego." With the expanded workforce, bridge construction accelerated dramatically the following day. Koa organized the team into specialized units: felling, stripping, binding, testing, and deployment. By midday, they had completed 15 bridge sections, and by sunset, the floating path extended nearly 100 meters into the swamp. The work was not without challenges. Twice, bridge sections collapsed when the binding materials failed, under the weight of Zalarian soldiers. A toxic gas pocket erupted beneath another section, forcing them to detour around the affected area. And always, the magnetic storm raged overhead, occasional lightning strikes reminding them of the power that had disabled their technology. Throughout these setbacks, Koa maintained a calm demeanor, adjusting designs and reinforcing weak points. He worked alongside the coalition forces, often putting himself in the most dangerous positions to test new sections before allowing others to follow. This earned him reluctant respect, even from the skeptical Captain Vrax. On the third day, they encountered a new obstacle. The swamp suddenly deepened from 3 meters to nearly 15, making their current bridge design insufficient. The logs they were using simply weren't long enough to bridge the gap without sinking into the depths. "This is the end of your primitive solution," Vrax declared, gesturing toward the expanse of dark water beyond their bridge. "No amount of lashed logs will cross this abyss." Koa studied the problem silently, then turned to Sari. "Are the vines you've been collecting strong enough to support tension stress?" The Altarian engineer considered the question, running her slender fingers along one of the thick vines. "They have remarkable tensile strength. What are you proposing?" "A suspension bridge," Koa replied. "We anchor the vines to those massive trees on either side of the deep section, creating a suspended pathway between them." Vrax scoffed. "Those trees are over 60 meters apart. The vines will snap under their own weight, let alone supporting our forces." "Not if we create a proper catenary curve," Koa countered. "The mathematics are straightforward. With enough supporting vines and proper weight distribution, it's entirely feasible." Commander Traylock, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Lieutenant Koa has earned some credibility. We will attempt his suspension bridge." He turned to Vrax. "Unless you have developed an alternative solution." The captain's mandibles clicked in irritation, but he offered no response. Construction of the suspension segment proved to be the most challenging aspect of the bridge yet. It required precise calculations and perfect execution. Koa spent hours explaining the principles to Sari and the other engineers, ensuring they understood not just the process, but the physics behind it. "The bridge will flex and sway," he warned Traylock. "That's intentional. A rigid structure would break under stress, but the movement might be unsettling for your soldiers." Traylock nodded. "Zalarians adapt to unexpected conditions. We will manage." When the suspension segment was finally completed, it represented a true fusion of approaches. The primary support structure followed Koa's ancient Earth design, but Sari had incorporated Altarian binding techniques that strengthened the connections, while the Zalarian engineers had developed a weight distribution system that maximized stability. Testing the suspension bridge became the focal point for the entire coalition force. Everyone gathered to watch as Koa prepared to be the first to cross the 60-meter span, hanging precariously above the black depths. "This should be my responsibility," Traylock stated unexpectedly. "As commander, I should assume the highest risk." Koa shook his head. "With respect, Commander, I understand the bridge's behavior better than anyone. I'll know immediately if something isn't right." Before Traylock could object further, Koa stepped onto the suspension bridge. The structure dipped slightly under his weight, swaying gently with each careful step. The vines creaked, but held firm as he made his way across, testing each section before committing his full weight. Halfway across, a sudden gust of wind set the bridge swinging more violently. Koa dropped to one knee, gripping the side supports as the bridge oscillated beneath him. The coalition soldiers watched in tense silence as the human fought to maintain his balance. After what seemed an eternity, the swinging subsided, and Koa continued his crossing. When he finally reached the other side, a spontaneous cheer erupted from the assembled forces, a rare display of emotion from the typically stoic Zalarians. Commander Traylock was the next to cross, his massive form causing the bridge to dip significantly lower than it had under Koa's weight. The commander's exoskeleton creaked with each careful step, but the bridge held. When he reached the other side, he placed one of his 4 hands on Koa's shoulder, a gesture of respect rarely offered to non-Zalarians. "Your primitive solution continues to prove effective," he acknowledged. "Perhaps there is wisdom in remembering old methods, even as we develop new ones." With the deep section conquered, bridge construction continued at an increased pace. The coalition forces had fully embraced Koa's approach, and innovations emerged from unlikely sources. Gorak, the Dulcan private, developed a more efficient method for stripping the trees using his natural claws. A young Zalarian scientist discovered that mixing the tree resin with certain swamp minerals created a waterproof coating that protected the bridge from deterioration. 8 days after beginning construction, the floating bridge extended 11 kilometers into the swamp. The black box's signal had grown stronger with each passing day, confirming they were on the correct path. Despite the deadline for data degradation, they had maintained a pace that would bring them to the target with hours to spare. On the morning of the 9th day, with less than a kilometer remaining, disaster struck. A massive creature, something like a cross between an earth crocodile and a centipede, emerged from the depths and attacked the bridge. Its segmented body, nearly 30 meters long, crashed against the structure, splintering 3 sections and sending several soldiers plunging into the toxic water. "Defensive positions!" Traylock shouted, his massive frame bracing against the shuddering bridge. The creature circled back, its multiple limbs churning the black water into froth. Without functioning energy weapons, the coalition forces were limited to physical projectiles and melee weapons, almost useless against the beast's armored hide. Koa surveyed the damage frantically. The destroyed sections had created a 6-meter gap in the bridge, and the creature was preparing for another attack. They were so close to their objective, but this final obstacle threatened to end their mission in failure. "Commander," he called to Traylock, "we need to distract it away from the bridge." "And how do you propose we do that, Lieutenant?" Vrax demanded. "Our weapons barely penetrate its shell." Koa's mind raced, recalling everything he had observed about the swamp's ecosystem over the past days. "The gas pockets," he said suddenly. "They're flammable. If we could ignite one near the creature but away from the bridge." Traylock understood immediately. "Sorry. Do we have any means of creating sufficient heat to ignite the gas?" The Altarian engineer nodded. "The emergency flares in our survival kits weren't affected by the EMP. They burn hot enough." "I'll do it," Koa volunteered. "I can swim to that gas pocket we marked yesterday, about 50 meters south. It's large enough to create a significant explosion." Traylock's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of concern in Zalarian body language. "The toxic water will penetrate your protective gear within minutes. You would not survive." "I don't need to swim all the way," Koa explained quickly, as the creature began another approach. "Just far enough to draw its attention. Once it follows me, I'll ignite the gas pocket." Before anyone could object further, Koa stripped off his heavier equipment, keeping only a small pouch containing flares. He took a deep breath, locked eyes with Traylock in a silent request for trust, and dove into the black water. The liquid burned against his skin immediately, seeping through the microscopic pores in his protective suit. Koa pushed the pain aside, focusing on strong, deliberate strokes that would create maximum disturbance in the water. Behind him, he heard the creature change direction, abandoning its attack on the bridge to pursue this new, vulnerable prey. Koa swam with desperate energy, the burning sensation intensifying with each second. His lungs began to ache, both from exertion and from the toxic vapors rising from the water. The gas pocket lay just ahead, identifiable by the bubbles breaking the surface in a roughly circular pattern. The creature gained on him rapidly, its multiple limbs propelling it through the water with frightening efficiency. Koa could feel the displacement wave as it closed the distance, jaws preparing to snap shut around his legs. With a final burst of effort, Koa reached the center of the gas pocket. He fumbled for the flare pouch, fingers clumsy from the water's corrosive effect. The creature was mere meters away now, its massive head rising from the water to reveal rows of serrated teeth. Koa struck the flare against the ignition strip. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then a brilliant red flame erupted in his hand. Without hesitation, he plunged the burning flare into the water, directly into the center of the bubbling gas. The explosion was immediate and far more powerful than anticipated. A fireball erupted from the swamp, engulfing both Koa and the creature in searing heat. The shockwave rippled outward, rocking the bridge and throwing coalition soldiers to their knees. When the flames subsided, there was no sign of either Koa or the creature. The surface of the swamp had been transformed into a smoking crater, black water rushing in to fill the void. "Koa!" Sari's voice broke the stunned silence. The Altarian engineer rushed to the edge of the broken bridge, her sensory filaments extended to search for any sign of life. Commander Traylock joined her, all four eyes scanning the disturbed water. "No life signs detected," he stated grimly. "The human sacrificed himself to preserve our mission." A somber mood settled over the coalition force. Despite their technological and physiological differences, Koa had earned their respect through his ingenuity and courage. Now, with victory within reach, they had lost the very person who had made it possible. "We will complete the bridge," Traylock announced, his voice carrying the formal tone of a Zalarian honoring ceremony. "Lieutenant Koa's sacrifice will not be in vain." The soldiers worked with renewed determination, repairing the damaged sections and extending the bridge toward the final objective. As they neared completion, a shout from the rear guard drew everyone's attention. "Movement in the water! 30 meters back!" Weapons were raised, all eyes fixed on the point where bubbles disturbed the surface. Tension mounted as something approached, then broke through. It was Koa. His protective suit hung in tatters, his exposed skin covered in angry red blisters. But he was alive, swimming weakly toward the bridge with one arm, while the other clutched something to his chest. Gorak, the Dulcan private, immediately dove into the water, his species' natural resistance to toxins allowing him to reach Koa without harm. With gentle care that belied his massive size, Gorak brought the human back to the bridge. "The creature," Koa gasped as Sari administered emergency medical treatment. "It was directly over the black box. The explosion." He uncurled his fingers to reveal a small, charred device, the research vessel's black box, remarkably intact despite its ordeal. Commander Traylock took the device reverently, all four eyes wide with astonishment. "You recovered the objective." Koa managed a weak smile through his pain. "Mission accomplished, sir." The journey back across the floating bridge was slow, but triumphant. Koa, too injured to walk, was carried on a stretcher fashioned from bridge materials. The black box's data was already being analyzed by the scientists, revealing secrets about gravitational manipulation that would indeed revolutionize interstellar travel. As they reached the original shoreline, where the remainder of their equipment had been secured, a welcome sight greeted them. The magnetic storm had finally dissipated, and communication with the orbital command ship had been re-established. Extraction vessels descended through the clearing atmosphere, their engines a comforting reminder of the technology they had been forced to abandon temporarily. In the medical bay of the command ship, Koa drifted in and out of consciousness as the advanced medical systems worked to neutralize the toxins in his system and repair the damage to his tissues. During one moment of clarity, he found Commander Traylock standing beside his bed, all four eyes focused intently on him. "The data has been secured," the commander informed him. "It exceeded our expectations. The gravitational manipulation principles contained in the black box will reduce interstellar travel time by approximately 63%. Koa nodded weakly. "Good news for all our worlds." "Indeed," Traylock paused, his mandibles clicking softly. "The Zalarian High Command has requested a full report on the mission. I have detailed your contributions extensively." "Thank you, sir, but it was a team effort." "Precisely the point I emphasized," Traylock continued. "Your bridge, a solution predating even the most rudimentary technology, succeeded where our advanced systems failed. This has provoked considerable discussion among my superiors." Koa attempted to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing skin. "What kind of discussion?" "The kind that reevaluates assumptions." Traylock's upper eyes blinked in what Koa had come to recognize as amusement. "Humans have been classified as a developing technological species in our databases. That classification is being reconsidered." "To what?" "Adaptively ingenious is the term being proposed. It suggests a species that not only creates new solutions, but retains valuable knowledge from its past." Traylock extended one of his four hands, resting it carefully on Koa's shoulder. "You have altered perceptions, Lieutenant, not only of humans, but of the very nature of progress." In the weeks that followed, as Koa recovered and prepared to return to Earth, the story of the floating bridge spread throughout the Coalition worlds. The official mission reports detailed the technical aspects, materials used, construction methods, load-bearing calculations. But the unofficial accounts, shared among soldiers and eventually filtering into public knowledge, focused on the human lieutenant who had reached into history to solve a future problem. On his final day aboard the command ship, Koa was summoned to the bridge. There, in the presence of officers from all Coalition species, Commander Traylock presented him with a ceremonial token, a small, crystalline representation of the floating bridge, etched with precision only Zalarian craftsmanship could achieve. "In Zalarian tradition," Traylock explained, "we commemorate decisive moments with these memory crystals. This one bears not only the image of your bridge, but also a coded frequency that any Zalarian vessel will recognize." His four eyes met Koa's, two with unmistakable respect. "It identifies you as Dux Pontus, bridge leader, one who creates pathways where none existed before." As Koa accepted the token, he noticed something that brought a smile to his face. The crystal bridge wasn't depicted as the crude, lashed log construction they had built. Instead, it showed an elegant fusion of ancient design and advanced materials, a symbolic representation of old knowledge enhanced by new understanding. "The swamp has already reclaimed our bridge," Sari commented, her sensory filaments gently swaying in what Koa had learned was an Altarian expression of contemplation. "Nature erasing our temporary intrusion." "The physical structure, yes," Koa agreed, carefully securing the crystal token. "But not what it represented." Later, as his transport prepared to depart for Earth, Koa stood at a viewing port, watching the dark sphere of Marathia rotate slowly beneath the ship. Somewhere on that mysterious world, beneath the poisonous fog and black waters, lay the remains of their bridge, already being absorbed back into the swamp ecosystem. But here, among the stars, something new had been built, a bridge between species, between past and future, between different ways of approaching problems. It was this invisible bridge, Koa reflected, that would prove far more lasting than any physical construction. As the engines engaged and the ship accelerated away from Marathia, Koa placed his hand against the cool surface of the viewing port. The crystal token in his pocket seemed to warm in response, as if acknowledging the connection between worlds that would continue long after this journey ended. In the vast emptiness of space, The legacy of the floating bridge extended like an unseen pathway, connecting not just distant points, but distant perspectives, proving that sometimes the oldest solutions could solve the newest problems, and that wisdom could be found in remembering as well as discovering. And somewhere in the command ship's database, a simple entry had been updated. Humans, adaptively ingenious species, bridge builders.